My name is Bob Woods. I'm the Director of Aeronautics for the state of Tennessee and a proud member of the board for the Aviation Hall of Fame. I've been asked to be with you for the next few minutes. The first thing I'd like to do, and maybe one of the most important things tonight, I'd like you all to stand for the presentation of colors. Flag, United States of America.
Oh, dark. Order arms. Exit. Guard.
Color Guard is from McGee Tyson Composite Squadron 148. McGee Tyson, round of applause, please. Please remain standing, and I'd like to ask Dr. Chris Gooch if you'd come forward, please. Dr. Gooch is going to give our prayer. While he's coming up, I'd like you all to add a special prayer in your thoughts for Mr. Lanny Culver, enshrined in 2007, learned only a few weeks after his induction that he had leukemia. Since that time, with few precious breaks to live normally during the past 2 years, Lanny has fought this disease bravely. We recently learned that he is again having to take strongest chemo treatments available, so add him in your prayers, please. Dr. Gooch.
Let's go to our Heavenly Father in prayer. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this event and what it means. We ask a special prayer tonight on the inductees, their families, and on the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame. Dear Father, we also are mindful at this time of the tragedy that's occurred at Fort Hood, Texas. We pray that you would be with the families of those who've lost their lives. Comfort them as only you can. And of those who are still in the hospital and are recovering, we pray that they will recover with no permanent sequelae to their injuries. Dear Father, bless the whole family of the military. There are many who are not on American soil tonight. They're in foreign countries defending us against terror. Dear Father, bless them, protect them, and bless their families and give them comfort and peace, and let them know that you are watching out for them. Dear Father, we thank you for all the blessings we enjoy from this great country and from this great state. Pray that you would help us, bless us, and keep us ever mindful that above all else, we are your servants while we're here on this planet. Forgive us of our sins and keep us and protect us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Please take your seats. I'd also like to acknowledge the Civil Air Patrol's assistance besides the color guard, they were assisting in parking and directing traffic outdoors, and lots of odds and ends in here this evening. McGee Tyson Composite Squadron 148, Sevier County Composite Squadron 093, and Morristown Composite Squadron 019. At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner Fred Colbreth to come forward. Commissioner Colbreth is the Vice Chairman of the Tennessee Aeronautics Commission. Been an aviator basically all of his life, CEO of a large heavy truck parts making company. He's been on the board of the Portland Airport Authority for a long time, a pilot in his own right, and is currently the Vice Chairman of the Tennessee Aeronautics Commission. Commissioner Fred Colbreth. And I guess one of my bosses.
Well, thank you. I'm here to honor our governor of the great state of Tennessee. But before I do that, he's got a beautiful letter here that I want to read. But before I do that, I've been hearing a lot today about seniors and talking to a lot of seniors, and I'm a senior myself, and they really excite me. Anna and I were having breakfast the other morning, and there was two seniors all up in their years, and they were bickering a little bit, and they was having a little hard time hearing. And she said, "Well, Ron, what are you going to do today?" He said, "Nothing." She said, "That's what you did yesterday." He said, "I know, but I didn't get through." But I'm honored to be here and be a part of the Tennessee Aeronautics, and the letter that Governor Phil Bredesen has wrote is, I will read that. Dear friends, the Governor of the state of Tennessee, I would like to recognize and commend the Tennessee Museum of Aviation and this year's Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame inductees for their continuing service to the aviation community. Each inductee being honored in the 8th Annual Induction Gala has displayed the finest performance and professionalism necessary to reach such a summit of the field. I know that all of you share my deep appreciation for Tennessee's diverse aviation opportunities and our supportive aviation community. I always consider it a privilege to fly through our state either on professional business or as a private pilot, which he is a private pilot. And I am glad to partner with each of you to continue promoting safe and enjoyable airways. Best wishes with the inductee ceremonies. It is my hope that the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame continues to be the forefront of promoting aviation, education, recognition, and innovation. With warmest regards, Governor Phil Bredesen. Thank you very much.
I am going to make several introductions now for some very important people in the audience. We won't be able to catch all of the important people in the audience, but I think most of these have a special part in our aviation heart. First thing, though, I'd like to ask, because Veterans Day was just 4 days ago, if all veterans or current service members would please stand up. A round of applause. God bless all of you for what you did and what you continue to do. The Aviation Hall of Fame members and the Board of Directors will be introduced later in the ceremony, so I won't do that now. But I'm going to ask several now special guests, special VIPs to stand. I'll say a few words about each one of them, but hold your applause until the end, please. The first one, and most of these people had slides while we were eating, you may have read, but Mr. Bill Robinson, if you'd stand. Bill Robinson was probably the longest interned enlisted Air Force POW, spent 8 Christmases in prison camp. He was with us in 2004 and participated in a previous induction for Lieutenant General Lee Cossack. Mr. Robert Gilliland, please stand. He's the Lockheed Chief Test Pilot for the SR-71 Blackbird program. Flew the first flight in both A and B models, as well as the principal testing in all phases of the Blackbird development. He's logged more flight time at Mach 3 than any other person and still holds that record. Came all the way from Burbank to be with us tonight. Dr. Michael Adams, President of the University of Georgia, and Mrs. Adams, Dr. Adams. Dr. Mal Baird, Vanderbilt University. Mal Baird used to be fairly involved in our Tennessee Aviation division. Did Mal stand? I didn't see Mal. Okay. I'm going to ask Commissioner Fred Colbert to stand again so you can see his wife, Anna. Anna, please stand with him. Ms. Carol Dobbins Fair of Johnson City, who was recently inducted into the North Carolina Transportation Hall of Fame. Mrs. Susan Larson of Santa Fe, New Mexico, is president of the 99s International Organization of Women Pilots, who is hosting Evelyn Johnson tonight. Mrs. Martha Miller, president of the Tennessee chapter of the 99s. Colonel James Rushing, who's the Southeast Region Commander for the Civil Air Patrol. And Colonel Barry Melton, who is the Tennessee Wing Commander of the Civil Air Patrol. Mr. Tom Henderson Schott, here from Colorado. Tom's executive director of the Aircraft Maintenance Technician Society. Ms. Montiel Warren of Savannah, Tennessee, who is a recipient of the Tennessee Air and Ice Commission Career Contribution to Aviation Award this year at our conference. Mr. Jim McCormick of Lexington, Kentucky, is representing the Aviation Museum of Kentucky. Mr. Neil Melton, the founder and primary benefactor and basically the owner of this entire museum. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our special VIP. And as I'm sure you've noticed in the program, several tables have been sponsored by different organizations and different people. Please review those, and I'd ask for a round of applause to all of the sponsors to help put this event on financially. We now have a brief program segment prior to taking a break, so hang on, we'll take a break here pretty soon, to celebrate the 100th birthday of Mama Bird, Miss Evelyn Bryan Johnson. One of Evelyn's dearest friends, and a lady who's been very active here in the past, who presented her for induction into the National Aviation Hall of Fame in Dayton, Ohio in 2007, and several of us got to go see her comments and tell you they were great at the national induction. But that's Mrs. Jeannie Ray O'Kelly. Jeannie Ray is here this evening from her home in Gainesville, Georgia, and it is a special pleasure to welcome her to the stage.
Haven't seen you in a while. Haven't seen you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight, and especially under such a great circumstances. You know, we think of a lot of people in this world that are helpers, that are friends, and my father used to say they're posts, and I think that's exactly the term that we need to call tonight for our honoree. Evelyn Johnson has been just that. She's been a friend, she's been a mentor, she's been our steady post. And as I said in Dayton, she is truly our indomitable Tennessee Mama Bird. So it's been my pleasure to do this. It's an honor to be here also representing our Tennessee 99s, of which fortunately I'm still a member of that group, as well as all of friends here of Evelyn's. And I'd like to share with you tonight a birthday card. Now, Evelyn sent this card to me. This was several years ago, and the card read, "May you live to be 120 years old." And the last voice you hear is mine. Evelyn, tonight, we would like to share with you, and in reciprocation, verbally, our card to you. We hope you live to be 120, and the last voice you hear is ours, right? Saying, happy birthday, Evelyn.
Happy birthday, how sweet it is. As we all turn the damn jar and we say hello to Evelyn Johnson of Morristown, Tennessee, 100 years old today. World record holder for the most flight hours as a female aviator pilot. Secret to longevity is doing what you love. I don't think anybody argues with that.
Happy birthday, Evelyn. Now my pleasure to introduce, already introduced once, but ask Colonel James Rushing to please come forward. Colonel Rushing is the commander of the Southeast Region for CAP, which of course is over the Tennessee wing, and he has a special presentation to make. Jim?
Thank you, General Wood. We appreciate being able to take just a few minutes and honor one of our longtime members in CAP. Civil Air Patrol, being the official auxiliary of the U.S. Air Force, uses a rank or grade structure very similar to that of the Air Force. There are currently 422 colonels, that's full colonels, in the 59,000 plus members of Civil Air Patrol today. The most common way of achieving that grade is to be appointed as one of our corporate officers, which means either being a wing commander of one of the 52 wings or being one of 6 national appointed officers. There are about 50 people who have achieved that distinction by means of a special promotion which must be approved by our National Executive Committee, which is the 14 people that make up the 2 top echelons of command within Civil Air Patrol. It's my pleasure tonight to announce that on last Saturday night at our NEC meeting in St. Louis, we voted to promote Lieutenant Colonel Evelyn Johnson to the grade of colonel. She joins a distinguished group of people that have made this, including people like Scott Crossfield, Mary Fike, Senator Tom Harkin, Frank G. Brewer, and CAP's last remaining charter members, who we refer to as the sub-chasers. These were the people that flew the coastal patrols during World War II. So if you would please stand, and I'm going to ask Colonel Melton to read the promotion orders while I make the presentation to Colonel Johnson.
This is Civil Air Patrol National Headquarters Personnel Action Number 102. Lieutenant Colonel Evelyn B. Johnson, CAP ID 126493 of the Tennessee Wing, is promoted to the grade of Colonel effective 14 November 2009 by authority of Civil Air Patrol Regulation 35-5 and action of the National Executive Committee on 7 November 2009. For the National Commander, signed by Susan P. Parker, Chief of Personnel and Member Actions. Thank you. You may be seated.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, not from the podium, but from her seat, I present to you Tennessee's own aviation legend, Miss Evelyn Bryan Johnson.
Go ahead and tell us whatever you'd like to say.
Oh, this really surprises me, and I'm quite affected by it, and I appreciate it so terribly much. I've always enjoyed the Civil Air Patrol and been proud to be a member. I know they do good work. Their search and rescue mission, I used to be able to fly a lot of search and rescue missions, but I haven't done that for a while. But this is just so surprising. I don't know what to say. It's kind of like I say, I've never been 100 years old before, and I don't know how to act like one. Anyway, I appreciate it very much, and I just feel extremely honored. Thank you.
Bob, before we close, I hope you all will join me in thanking Certified Executive Chef Dave Coburn for the evening meal tonight. Dave, I don't know where you are, but thank you very much. Join me. Thank you.
One other small group I'd like to stand. I've noticed several previous members of the Tennessee Aeronautics Commission in the crowd, and they did not get introduced. I've seen at least 4. Would you members please stand? John Baugh, Jack King, Joe Howard, whoever else is, Jim Etheridge. Thank you for all the work you've done in the past, gentlemen. We are now going to take a break, a nice long one, so everybody has a chance to get ready for the gala evening. Be back in your seat, ready to go at 8:30, or I'll come whip you. Take a break.
We need to give Bob and Karen a really big hand. They worked themselves to death on this thing. He's shy. There's nothing shy about Bob. I was going to say, they shy from being thanked a lot, but they do a lot of work, and they don't look for any kind of thanks or anything, but they work really hard at this, and that's what makes this a success. They're the volunteers, but he and Karen are the driving force behind this event. Also, if you had any pictures taken with Miss Evelyn, those pictures, you can pick them up over here at this table against the wall after the induction ceremony is over this evening. Also, the silent auction will be held open for a while after the induction ceremony is over. So don't think that since you didn't get to bid on things before we got started here, that you don't have a chance to bid on an item that you want. It will be kept open for a while after the induction ceremony is over, so you'll have plenty opportunity to bid on the item that you want. My name is Clay Derryberry, and I'm honored to be your MC for the induction part of the evening. We're going to try to do things efficiently and smoothly and quickly. I will begin by reading this poem. Because I fly, I laugh more than other people. I look up and see more than they. I know how the clouds feel, what it's like to have the blue in my lap, to look down on birds, to feel freedom in a thing called the stick. Who but I can slice between God's billowed legs and feel him laugh and crash with his step? Who else has seen the unclimbed peaks, the rainbow's secret, the real reason birds sing? Because I fly, I envy no person on earth. And so tonight we come here to honor folks who fly or who help other people fly. The Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame was established to recognize, honor, and enshrine individuals whose leadership in or with aviation, whether by exceptional service or extraordinary achievement, has made an enduring contribution to aviation for Tennessee our nation, or the world. Established in 2001 as Tennessee's official Aviation Hall of Fame by the 102nd General Assembly, those honored are recipients of Tennessee's highest honor in aviation or aerospace. This institution will record their achievements and perpetuate the memory of those enshrined here for all time. Some are interested in the nomination process. I'll just take a minute to let you know about that. Eligibility for induction into the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame is based entirely upon the nominee's significant and lasting contribution to aviation or aerospace for Tennessee, our nation, or the world. That service or achievement may have been made from Tennessee, or if outside the state, by a Tennessean, living or deceased. The Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame Board of Directors will select honorees once each year. Those chosen for induction will be enshrined at a formal ceremony held at the Tennessee Museum of Aviation, which is where we are now. Nominations are perpetual until formally acted on by the board. Nomination forms may be obtained from the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame or through its website at www.tnaviationof.org. Authentication or service and/or accomplishments are the responsibility of the nominator and must accompany the nomination application. Nominations can be submitted at any time, and you may contact any of us who are on the board of directors or Bob, and we can get you an address and the forms to do that on. Okay, the way this will work this evening is this. I will first call up the inductees to come up on the stage to sit in their seats by their plaques, and then I will call each of their presenters who will in turn present them, and then we will induct them into the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame. So at this time I'm going to call all the inductees up at one time. Inductee number 1 is Jennifer Cairns Baker. She come on up. And Jennifer will need to sit in this end seat. Next to her will be Mr. Jim Etheridge. Our posthumous inductee tonight is E. Ward King. And our last one will be Lieutenant Colonel William H. Pickering, Jr., U.S. Air Force retired. Let's have a lot of applause tonight. Let's give them all a big applause. I will introduce the presenter for each one. The presenter will speak for about 5 minutes, presenting the inductee. Then the inductee will come forward. We will give them a medallion, which hangs around their neck. There's a little plaque and another little medal. And then the inductee will speak for about 15 minutes. So here we go. The presenter for Jennifer Cairns Baker is Susan Watley. Susan Watley started her career in aviation in 1975, working first for the Aviation and then instructing for King School of Aeronautics, which is where I met them. She left to work with children with muscular dystrophy and just returned to aviation this past May with her sister Jennifer, asking her to be one of the instructors for the airframe and power plant courses at Baker's School of Aeronautics. Miss Susan Watley.
Thank you very much. I first met Jennifer when I was 2.5. Our mother said that she went to go check on her new infant, and when she went to go to the crib, I was there instead of Jennifer. Well, it was in July, and it was hot. It was an upstairs bedroom, so the window was open. So she thought that I had thrown Jennifer out the window. So after frantically running downstairs, looking for Jennifer all around the yard, and then running back upstairs, she did find her, safe, unharmed, stashed under the crib, with her blankets on top of her. But she was unharmed, and I really and truly believe that I slept in that crib before Jennifer was born. When Jennifer first told me that she has received this great honor, I said, "My word, Jennifer, what did you do?" And she says, "Well, I have been in aviation for a while. I've been on some committees." Well, I just want to tell you a few things that Jennifer has done. For over 30 years, she has been making a difference in people's lives, huge difference. She's been teaching and leading in the aviation industry. For 16 of those years, she traveled throughout the United States and several foreign countries, teaching classes in the airframe and power plant mechanics, and also the inspection authorization. She has literally guided thousands of men and women through the process of attaining the FAA license, and this allowing them to pursue their careers in aviation maintenance. She is an FAA written test examiner, a safety advocate, and a tireless promoter of Charles E. Taylor. Please do not let Jennifer know you do not know who Charles E. Taylor is, the first A&P mechanic. Throughout her career, she has developed and maintained a reputation with the FAA as unwavering and beyond reproach in character. She was instrumental in the state of Tennessee declaring May 24th as the Tennessee Aviation Maintenance Technicians Day. And she has a great free picnic on that day at her school, so everybody's welcome. Right, Jennifer? That is part of Jennifer's career. And you can see her as a very attractive, poised, self-confident, and successful woman. But I want to give you a glimpse of the inside. As I said, I was working for the Muscular Dystrophy Association for 15 years. And one of my greatest challenges and most rewarding and most fun was the MDA summer camp. I had 50 kids in wheelchairs, a lot of them on ventilators, for a whole week. Now, the Muscular Dystrophy Association did pay for the campsite, and they paid for the meals. And Jennifer quietly paid for everything else for 15 years. Every balloon, every prize, every staff gift, all of the items that went into the store, Jennifer paid for. Kids didn't know it. But Jennifer and her husband Eddie also came and took their pontoon boat to come and give the kids rides. And sometimes these kids, this is the first time they've ever been on a boat, and they also talked their neighbors into bringing their boat out too. And the kids had a wonderful time. I think that the reason that Baker School of Aeronautics has been so extremely successful and the leader in the industry is because Jennifer believes in people. Jennifer believes that every aircraft mechanic out there can be FAA certified. And she has set up a program that makes it possible. Since I have been teaching there with her, I have seen men come in their 70s. They have never really been good at taking written tests, and they have left that school with their A&P license. I have seen them come in at 18, scared, coming off of a 147 school with barely enough experience, and they leave with their A&P license. Jennifer believes in every student. She has a party on Monday night when all the new students come in, and she has great food, and she has drinks and music, and she gives them all a little gift. She does this because she can actually meet every student that comes through her school. There's thousands. But she looks at every single student. She cares. There are boxes of letters that have come to the school, and I have seen Jennifer get emotional over some of them, that they are from former students or from their parents or from their employees, thanking Jennifer for her personal concern. A lot of the students come in on a shoestring, and I have seen her loan money for motel bills, food, even for the gas home. Jennifer cares. Well, like I said, everybody can see the person that she is, but I did want you to see the glimpse of this beautiful person on the inside. And you know what? I am so glad I did not throw her out that window. May I present to you one of my very best friends and my sister, Miss Jennifer Cairns Baker.
Miss Watley. We're gonna fix you up with your stuff.
Okay.
If you would hang.
Oh, I would love to. Oh, and these are your colors.
They are. Thanks.
Thank you. Love you.
And just play.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
Set it back here.
I will. Well, thank you, Susan, for those extraordinary kind words. It's one of the nicest things she's ever said in all these years I've known her. I have 4 sisters, and all 4 of them are here tonight, so that's very special to me. I was the middle child, the one with all the psychological problems, and we'll talk about that later. But I want to thank Susan for doing this for me tonight, and especially I want to thank her for not throwing me out that window. Executive Director Bob Minner, I don't know where you are. Karen, your lovely wife, I want to thank you so much. They work so tirelessly to make sure everybody has a wonderful time here. I've been here before, and I'm just amazed on the work that they do. Board members, fellow inductees, family, friends, and fellow guests. Wow, what an exciting evening. I cannot explain to you how humble I have felt these past few months when I was told of this great honor. It is so hard to believe that I will be among such aviation greats. Evelyn Johnson, for Pete's sake. I mean, it's wonderful to be here to help celebrate your 100th birthday, but just to be in the same room with her, wow. Happy birthday, Mama Bird. This is also incredible for me because I am not a licensed aircraft mechanic. I'm not a pilot. I have just always been a great admirer and supporter of these talented people. And most people who know me well know that I especially admire and support our aviation maintenance technicians, our aircraft mechanics. Let me explain why. You see, over 30 years ago, I fell in love with an aircraft mechanic. Not any one mechanic in particular. No, I was happily married to my wonderful wife. Listen. My wonderful husband. And we're still married today. I guess after tonight we'll see. But I was a young woman with 2 young daughters when my lovely sister Susan, who you just met, introduced me to the owner of the aircraft mechanic school, where she was an instructor. This was in the 70s. He asked me if I would be interested in coming to work to the school, at the school as well, and I did. Of course, at the time, I couldn't have told you how to change oil in my car. But being young, I said, sure, I can teach aircraft mechanics. After a few weeks of training under Susan's guidance, I began instructing, and that is when I fell in love with AMTs. They are the most incredible group of individuals. They have all taught me so much. They were always gracious, very appreciative of my help, and so very humble. I found that the majority had not chosen the aviation maintenance career because of the money. I mean, we all know back in the 70s, aircraft mechanics were not being paid well. They were always being paid less than an automobile mechanic. They also didn't choose the career for recognition. They were getting very little recognition, as they still do today. No, they did it because they loved it. They showed so much passion about their work. They often talked to me about how important it was to ensure they did their work to perfection, because they knew and understood how their work kept people safe and alive in their planes. More than once, I have heard from these mechanics that they would not ever return an aircraft to service unless they felt it was safe for their own family. I was so impressed and overwhelmed with the stories I would hear, and I loved going to work every day. When Susan left and went on to do this wonderful work at muscular dystrophy, the owner sold me a small percentage of the school and moved to Florida. I stayed in Nashville to run the school, and I was given such wonderful opportunities over the next few years. I traveled all over the United States teaching A&P and IA classes. I got to go visit places that I would never been able to do. The most exciting trips I took were teaching at all the military bases of every branch of service. From the Coast Guard in Kodiak, Alaska, the Marines in Beaufort, South Carolina, the Navy in Norfolk, Virginia, a huge helicopter guard unit in Fort Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. I taught classes for Pratt & Whitney, Gulfstream, Sabreliner. It was awesome. I could not believe that I was given these great opportunities. Sometimes I flew and sometimes I drove, but these trips afforded me just incredible, incredible experiences. I felt so fortunate and that I was doing something that I loved for people who were so appreciative, and to travel to all these wonderful places. 15 years ago, my partner felt like aviation was dead and wanted to close the school. Business had slowed down, but I couldn't bear to see that happen. So I ended up buying him out and began the scary journey of trying to do it alone. Since that time, the school has flourished. Aviation was not dead after all. We have had the good fortune of having students travel to attend our school from 129 different countries from around the world. Aviation is such an exciting world. It attracts people from every facet of life. We average about 1,100 students a year, and each and every one of them has a story. We have had celebrities, astronauts, politicians, doctors, lawyers, and yes, even a chief from an African tribe. My favorite student, however, is still that one I fell in love with 30 years ago, that true and hardworking aircraft mechanic. And I want to make it clear that along the way, and over the past 31 years, I have also been very fortunate to have many talented employees who made that journey much easier for me. So many of them have moved on to much more successful careers, but the school could never have achieved the success or wonderful reputation it has today without them. It is such an honor that several have come to be with me tonight. Again, I'm proud to say my 4 beautiful sisters are here. And all of them, every one of them, I think have worked at the school at one time or another. So they have not just supported me throughout my career, but they have always been my best friends. Thank you for coming. I love y'all very much over there. There is one employee who is not able to be here tonight, but I want her and all of you to know that she has played a very important role in giving our school such a great reputation. Her name is Donna Hires, which I am sure many of you have met or have heard about. She is an incredible instructor, has taught literally thousands of students from around the world. She has taught at the school for 22 years and has built up her own great reputation. So I want to thank all these people for all their contributions. I am also honored tonight to have 4 fantastic women that I graduated from high school with over, and they asked me not to say how many years. I took it out of my speech. We somehow all survived going to an all-girl Catholic high school. I'm sure there's people out there who've experienced the same thing. Of course, we have to realize this has been back in the, 60s? We were laughing because one of the nuns told us that our class would never amount to anything. Among the 88 graduates, so many of them have achieved extraordinary and successful careers. So we want to thank Sister Mary Bernadette for challenging us to prove her wrong. And I want to thank you, fellow graduates, for being with me tonight. That is such an honor for you being here. Of course, there are some very special people who have supported me and granted me these opportunities, even though at times it was a great sacrifice for them. My 2 lovely daughters, Becky and Cindy, who's sitting over here. They were often without a mom during their preteen and teenage years when I was traveling so much. I am so very proud of both of them today. Becky, our oldest daughter, graduated with a degree from Middle Tennessee State University in Aviation Maintenance Management. She is an A&P licensed mechanic, teaches A&P and IA classes at the school, and helps me with the daily operation. Cindy, our youngest daughter, has been with UPS for 17 years. She drives a delivery truck for them. She is also always out trying to break some wild, crazy horse. That's the reason she's limping tonight. But she also works part-time at the school on weekends. They both have given me so much support. I love you both. Becky and Cindy, would you please stand up? Aren't they beautiful? They have both grown into 2 very intelligent, strong, and independent women, both working in non-traditional female careers. Gee, I wonder how that happened. They have also given us 3 adorable grandchildren. Baker, age 10, Hayden and Maddie, who are ages 8. We gave them the choice of coming here tonight or staying with the other family members at the Wilderness of the Smokies Indoor Water Park. I don't believe I have to tell you the choice they made. However, I know they're very proud of their Nana, because I went to Maddie's 3rd grade Halloween party a couple weeks ago. She introduced me to one of her friends and said, "This is my Nana, and she is famous. She's going to be in the Hall of Fame." Her friend looked up at me and was very excited and said, "Wow, you'll get to meet Dolly Parton." When I told her that it wasn't that Hall of Fame, She went, "Oh," and walked away. So much for impressing 8-year-olds. Last, and this is my greatest hero and my best friend, my very supportive and loving husband of 39 years, Eddie Baker. He has always been the wind beneath my wings. So many times he had to be a mom and a dad to our daughters. He never complained. He would bake cookies and cupcakes and take them to school when I was out of town. He cooked, he cleaned, he was a chauffeur, and always ensured that they had everything they needed, so I wouldn't feel torn between the school, my career, and my family. He did all of this while working a full-time job, building our forever home in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, and taking care of a barn full of horses. He has always been supportive and encouraged me. He has always been there for me no matter what my needs were. To me, he is the true hero in our family and whom I love so very much. Eddie, please stand up. I want to thank him for giving me such a wonderful career and life, or letting me have this, affording me this. I never certainly could have done it without him. So to all of you, I just want to thank you for being here and being part of my incredible journey in this wonderful world of aviation, and ask you that next time you meet or talk with an aviation maintenance technician, take a few extra minutes to talk to him. Listen to his stories, feel his passion, and thank him for his contributions in making sure that our planes are safe. I bet you too will fall in love. Thank you.
You just go back over and sit down in your seat.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Jennifer Baker, everybody. One thing I did not mention, each of these inductees will be given a plaque which reads thusly: "For enduring contributions, extraordinary achievement, and exceptional service to aviation for Tennessee or our nation and the world." In this case, Jennifer Baker is enshrined this 14th day of November 2009 as a member of the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame. And so they all receive one of these. Our next inductee is Mr. Jim D. Etheridge. His presenter is Mr. M. Lloyd Hanson. Mr. Hanson is a friend of Jim's, been a long time. He has a degree in petroleum engineering from the University of Oklahoma, a law degree from the University of Memphis. He spent his entire career in the energy field and is still active in that today. Mr. M. Lloyd Hanson.
For those of you who didn't hear it, Jim said, "Be kind." It's a real honor for me to be here tonight to recognize my friend, my extra special friend. And our friendship has grown as we have spent time with him flying the plane and my sitting in the right-hand seat. And I might say at times he has helped improve my prayer life. As the first honoree was speaking here, I thought back it was 1952 that I first flew across the Atlantic from the city of Stavanger, Norway, to New York. The trip took 26 hours, and I thought to myself, there sure has been a change in aviation. But tonight I want to come and share a little bit about my friend Jim. Jim learned to fly in his hometown of Union City, Tennessee, of course, in 1959, and received his private pilot check ride from none other than the aviation legend Evelyn Bryan Johnson on January 19th, 1960. Is Evelyn still here?
Oh, yeah.
You did a good job, Evelyn. He later served alongside Mrs. Johnson on the Tennessee Aeronautics Commission. His pilot ratings include commercial fixed wing, single, multi-engine, and instrument ratings and commercial helicopter. Jim has owned and flown a variety of piston, turboprop, and helicopter aircraft, and I've ridden in most of them. In 1995, Don Sundquist appointed Jim to the Tennessee Aeronautic Commission, where he served for 2 consecutive 5-year terms, twice as commission chairman. While on the Tennessee Aeronautic Commission, the Tennessee Office of Aeronautics was elevated to division status within the Tennessee Department of Transportation. Prior to completing his 2nd term on the State Aeronautics Commission, Jim was appointed to the Memphis-Shelby County Airport Authority. Jim has chaired the MSCAA Long-Term Planning and Development Committee and its General Aviation Committee. Jim was elected the 2008 chairman of the Commissioners Committee of the Airports Council International, North America, and the North American branch of Airports Council International, headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, that is. And he became a voting member of the Airports Council Board in Washington. In 2008, Jim was further honored as the recipient of the Career Contribution to Aviation Award from the Tennessee Aeronautics Commission. Aviation has been an avocation and a labor of love for Jim for over 50 years. Through his talents and his leadership, Jim has made countless contributions to aviation. For extraordinary achievement and service to aviation for Tennessee, our nation, and the world, Jim is honored by and inducted into the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame this 14th day of November 2009. I can't help but share just a few personal glimpses. Is that okay, Jim? Jim has been, I share this for you aviation mechanics here. Jim and I flew a lot. I don't know how many hours we have, Jim, with you flying and my sitting in the right-hand seat. I'm conservative when I say several thousand. We left Moisant Airport in New Orleans early one morning, and it was a beautiful sunny morning. And as we were taxiing out, all of a sudden I looked out the window, and there comes a boat, and next comes another boat. And then all of a sudden parts begin streaming out of this airplane. I think one looked like a muffler. And I said, Jim, the plane's falling apart. And all of a sudden he got from headquarters, the tower, and they talked about his Navajo 9291 Yankee. You are debrising the runway. And asked him to take appropriate action. We've had lots of good flights. But you know, there's some you just remember. One time we were flying from Beaumont, Texas, also to Moisant. And we had left Beaumont around 10:30 that night after having worked all day. And when we got closer to New Orleans, we hadn't quite come to that large swamp, which is right before you approach Moisant, full of cypress stumps. Jim just happened to tilt his wings a little bit, and all of a sudden, the left engine quits. I said, whoa, what's happening here? And then he comes back again, levels out, both engines working fine. Then he tilts the other way. The right engine quits. I said, And we did this 2 or 3 times. And Jim looks at me and he says, Hanson, I think we have a problem. And he starts taking out over the river. I said, where are you going? He says, we're going to look for a place we can land this plane in the river. I said, whoa. He says, would you please go back and look and see if there's a hammer in that cabinet in the back? I said, what's that for? He says, well, we may have to use it to break the glass or get out of this plane. Well, this went on and it got serious. And finally, we tried this exercise, and boy, they quit like that. And finally, he's talking now to the tower, and now I realize it's really serious. I said it was in the morning. It was late in the evening. It was probably closer, Jim, to 11:30 at night. And all of a sudden, they declare an emergency. And all of the aircraft in the entire area are advised to stay clear. No pilot wants that honor. And it lit up that entire airfield as if it was daylight. Jim climbed. He said, I'm going to climb, and I think we have a pretty good glide path. And he came in, and we're coming into that airport. It's bright as day. Both engines are still functioning. We touch down, and we go just 50, 60 feet, and all of a sudden, both engines cut out. What had happened? We were extraordinarily empty. Not his fault. He had just put in new tanks in both of the wings, and they had been miscalibrated. So I can say that but for his flying expertise, this guy may not have been here today. And I'm serious. That's serious. Jim has an extraordinary flying capacity. Everyone who has flown with, we just talked about it. He is an expert pilot. And besides that, he is a very special friend. Jim, it's an honor to be here tonight and to recognize you and your service, and just to say thank you for friendship, thank you for being a great pilot, and thank you for the fact that you landed that plane safely.
If you'd like to regale him with
I'd love to.
Hanson, don't mess up my few remaining hairs.
I did that without messing up his hair. God bless you, big guy.
Thank you, my friend.
Also this plaque. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I asked him to be kind enough not to mess up my few remaining hairs. Lloyd, thank you very much for those kind words. I also want to thank Bob Mentor, the founder and chairman, Joanne Spears, the executive director, and all the board of directors of the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame for this honor. And I'd also like to, in particular, recognize and thank my family who is here this evening. My wife, Julie, my daughter, Lisa Wilbanks, and her husband, Wayne, my 2 grandchildren, Jackson and Tucker Wilbanks, my son, Jim Etheridge III, his girlfriend, Tish Middleton, my dear sister, Mary Adams, her husband, Dr. Michael Adams, president of the University of Georgia, and my cousin, who is like a sister, Linda Jennings, and her husband, George. Would you please stand up and be recognized? I appreciate you for what all you've done for me over the years. I'd also like to thank my friends who are here this evening. It's a very special occasion for me, and to have you participate in it is uniquely special. It's quite a humbling and a tremendous honor to be selected as an inductee into the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame. My love of aviation spans more than 50 years, beginning with the impression of a small child looking up in the sky and seeing a squadron of B-29 bombers flying overhead with white contrails streaming from the exhaust of their four engines. The first flight in a private plane, a two-place Funk with a 65 horsepower engine, and yes, I said Funk. Most of you have never heard of that, but there was a plane. And how excited I was when I was finally able to take flying lessons in my hometown of Union City. I had the privilege of taking my private pilot check ride on January 19th, 1961, with our own aviation legend, Evelyn Bryant Johnson. Happy 100th birthday, Evelyn. Evelyn, it's an honor to be here at this occasion as a former student, and now to not only thank you, but to convey my warmest regards on this your birthday. I can still remember flying to Morristown and somewhat apprehensively walking into the Morristown Airport office to meet the person who was going to determine my immediate flying future. Evelyn obviously sensed my nervousness and masterfully calmed my fears. She made me feel at ease. Before the end of the check ride, I actually began to think I really might pass. Fortunately, I did pass. The way Evelyn conducted herself during that all-important milestone so impressed me that I asked her to give me my first hour of dual instrument that very same day. What she did in that hour formed the foundation on which I continually built my knowledge of and respect for the art of flying. We were in a tripacer for the duel. We climbed to altitude. She put me under the hood and said, "I want you to fly straight and level." Then she proceeded to fold her arms and sit there and just ride along. After a few minutes, she told me to remove my hood and to look out. Much to my surprise, I was in a climbing turn to the left. After I told her that I felt we were straight and level, she indelibly etched in my mind the importance of always trusting your flight instruments. And Evelyn, that's one of the main reasons I'm here tonight, and be able to say thank you to you for that. While we're on the subject of student pilots, I'd like to share a story some of us can probably relate to. A student became lost during a solo cross-country flight. While attempting to locate the aircraft on radar, air traffic control asked the student, "What was your last known position?" The student answered, "When I was number one for takeoff." As with most pilots, I could stand here and tell you stories all night. I would like to share one with you regarding my dear friend, Mr. Lloyd Hansen, who just spoke and said those reasonably kind words most of the time about me. This was a number of years ago, and Lloyd and I had just become associated. We had departed Memphis International and St. Navajo en route to some meetings in Houston. It was a cold winter morning, and just after takeoff, we lost the right engine. I shut the engine down, advised the tower that we would be returning to the airport, and at the same time trying to assure Lloyd that the plane flew great on one engine and there was nothing to be concerned about. As hard as I tried, I could not get him to engage in conversation with me. It was only after we landed and were back at the FBO did I understand his silence. We were using adjacent payphones back then. I was making commercial airline arrangements, and he was talking to his secretary to have her reschedule our meetings. I heard him tell her that, and I quote, "I don't know if it was Jim's flying ability or my praying, but between the two of us, we got the plane back on the ground safely." Over the ensuing years, Laura and I have had a number of, shall I say, compromising situations in aircraft, which fortunately we always worked through. My dear friend Aubrey Smith, who is in the audience tonight, was in the right seat of my plane when our families were on our way to Steamboat Springs, Colorado to go skiing. We were flying to the Hayden, Colorado airport in a snowstorm. A citation in front of us had just made 2 attempts to land and had to divert to another airport. I told Center I would shoot one approach, and if we couldn't make it, we'd divert to an airport in Wyoming. When I got to the missed approach point, I couldn't see anything but snow on the ground. And just as I started to execute my missed approach, Aubrey said, "There's a strobe light buried in the snow." And sure enough, we made out 2 strobes, one on either side of the approach end of the runway, that allowed us to land and enjoy our trip. The moral of that story is, sometimes a non-professional co-pilot with an eagle eye can benefit the pilot in tight situations, or another way to put it, 2 good pairs of eyes are better than 1. I had the privilege of serving on the Tennessee Aeronautics Commission for 10 years, twice as chairman. I cannot say enough about Bob Woods, the director, and his staff. They are absolutely top-notch. I take pride in the fact that as chairman, I had a strong hand in hiring Bob when he came to the commission. We in Tennessee can be very proud of what the Aeronautics Commission does for our airports. While still serving on the Aeronautics Commission, I was appointed to the Memphis-Shelby County Airport Authority. What an honor it has been for me to serve with Larry Cox, the president, his great staff, our tremendous board of directors. One of our commissioners and my friend John Thompson is here tonight, and our commission is chaired by Mr. Arnold Pearl. Memphis International Airport is known as America's Aerotropolis. It is the only airport in North America considered to be a true aerotropolis, a world-class facility serving more than 10 million passengers a year. Memphis International has held the distinction of being the #1 cargo airport in the world for almost 2 decades. Hong Kong is number 2. Memphis International Airport is the economic engine of the Mid-South, with an economic impact of $28.7 billion annually. Yes, that's with a B. More than Atlanta, Minneapolis, Denver, or Detroit airports. After becoming a member of the Memphis-Shelby County Airport Authority, I became active in the Commissioners Committee of Airports Council International North America, serving as chairman in 2008. Most airport commission members are politically active, thereby giving air carrier airports a strong lobbying force. There are 5 air carrier airports in Tennessee. As chairman, my goal was to expand the lobbying efforts of the commissioners of major airports in the U.S. and Canada with a focus on guiding legislation in Washington to benefit our airports and air travelers. That same year, I was honored as a recipient of the Career Contributions to Aviation Award presented by the Tennessee Aeronautics Commission, for which I am very grateful. I finally felt I had been elevated almost on par with Bob Mentor. I have been blessed throughout my life as a result of my involvement in aviation. The knowledge I have gained, the experiences I've had, and the adventures it has provided me are priceless. But above all, it's the truly great friends I have made along the way that I cherish most. I thank you all for being here to share this moment with you, and thank you again for this great honor.
Get your plaque.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Jim Etheridge. Our third inductee is posthumous Mr. E. Ward King. And the presenters tonight for Mr. King are his children, Ms. Peg Norris and Mr. Jack King.
It is truly an honor for Jack and me to be here tonight as our father, E. Ward King, is inducted into the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame. But having several of his grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and in-laws with us tonight is very, very special. And at this time, we would like to introduce the family and to ask them to stand. First, representing our brother Bill, who died 3 years ago, are his daughters, Elizabeth King Brown, Mary King Sullivan, her husband Mark, and their children Brian and Jordan. And I only have one of my immediate family here tonight, but it's my son, E. Ward Norris.
I too want to say a little honor tonight about for us for a part that they played in the Hall of Fame for introduction ceremonies. Along with us tonight, my family, I have my wife of 62 years, Jane. Hey, Jane. I have my daughter, Jennifer Ferreira, and her husband, Jim, and their two sons, I'll get it right here in a minute, Dimitri and Sergey. I have a son, Robert King, and his wife, Mary Claire, and their four boys, Matt King, Sam King, Justin King, and Alex King. We have more than you do, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
I definitely want to mention at this time that our grandson, Justin, had the privilege and the opportunity to take his check ride with Mama Bird. This opened the door for him to become a commercial pilot, and we were very proud. And thank you, Mama Bird. The Gates to commercial pilot. Back in 1931, our family moved to Kingsport, Tennessee in 1925. Daddy opened up a very successful Studebaker dealership. In 1931, when the Deep Depression hit, he closed the business. He always said that success is not always permanent, and failure isn't always fatal. With 6 to 7 major plants in Kingsport, Daddy knew they needed better transportation to the Northeast markets like New York, New Jersey, and New England. So he met with the traffic managers of the different companies to see what kind of service they needed to develop these markets. When he told them that he could give them second and third day service to the Northeast, he was encouraged by them to response and that he should move ahead with what he had planned. He began a new business in 1932 in the middle of the Depression by opening his office for a new truck line called the Mason and Dixon lines at our home with two other partners. Each of the men bought trucks. Daddy didn't drive his, but the two other people did. He had to manage the company through the office, through sales, and through maintenance. One of the stories that always stayed with us, that when he got a load in New York, he decided to jump in the car and drive to New York ahead of the load, where he could return with a full load if possible. He said you cannot make money being in the trucking business with a one-way load going in an empty back. He got his car and drove to New York. Didn't feel like he had the proper clothes, so he bought a suit. And at that time, in 1930, if you bought a suit, you got 2 pair of pants and 2 vests with it. He stayed in a cheap hotel in New York, got up the next morning to go over to S.H. Kress, which was one of the largest 5 and dime stores in the country. When he arrived to their office, he had to walk through rain, and his suit had shrunk on him. When he got inside, he talked to the traffic manager and said what the Mason-Dixon was all about. He said, I drove all the way from Kingsport up here, bought a new suit, got caught in the rain, and it shrunk on me, but I still kept my appointment with you. The man was so impressed with him, he said, Mr. King, for driving all the way from Kingsport in a car, buying a new suit, getting caught in the rain, and shrinking on you, I'm going to give you all the business you want back to the South. And that's one of the biggest customers that Mason-Dixon had back in the early days. Mason-Dixon became the largest family-owned trucking business in the United States and the 14th in trucking in the year 1982, which we were very proud of.
Following the war, several young men returned to our area and they became employed at Mason and Dixon. And it was at this time that my dad realized it was very hard to get to all the terminals. So he decided that he would lease an airplane for the company to use. And one beautiful Saturday, he said, I think I'd like to go out and fly over Cherokee Lake. Well, my brother Jack, he was a co-pilot, so he was going along with him. And there was a very nice ride, so we thought, until they returned home. And my mother and I were there, and as my dad walked down the hall, he was smoking a cigarette. He had not smoked in several years. Immediately my mother said, what is going on? And he said, when I said I wanted to go down and fly over the lake, I didn't mean in the lake. Well, guess what? That leased plane was returned. And Eward King didn't take to the skies for about another 2 years. But I have to say here that this guy who was a co-pilot became later a captain on the company plane. And he still had that tendency to kid along. And one time they were taking maintenance people up to visit some of the terminals. As they were landing, the guys were a little jittery after all. They had to go because this was the boss's son. Jack turns around and says, Joe, reach under your seat, pull out that manual that says instructional manual, and turn to page 45 and tell me how to land this plane when we get there. Well, they continued flying with him. But after all of this, he still continued his love of transportation. And he even opened Cherokee Boat Company, which was a distributor for Chris Craft boats. And a few years later, when his nerves kind of settled, he realized again, we have got to reach the terminals. And in doing this, he realized there is no air service within the state of Tennessee. And therefore, at the age of 61, he set out to provide intrastate air transportation in the state of Tennessee.
Starting a truck line seemed easy to do, but when it came to starting an airline, that was a different story. With the approval of the certificate granted from the state of Tennessee, he started making plans to start an airline. There were not only equipment to be purchased, but also providing a hangar, a maintenance shop, and crew, not to mention pilots and stewardess. And he was able to purchase 5 DC-3s from the United Airlines and found an unassembled new hangar in Greensboro, North Carolina, with Mason-Dixon hauling it free of charge to the Tri-City Airport. The captain of Mason-Dixon plane became the vice president of operations to train pilots and find necessary personnel to open up the airline.
But February 8th, 1957 was a most exciting day for all of us, as at Tri-Cities Airport, city, business, and civic leaders met with my dad and brother Bill and Jack. It was exciting as we saw those 5 DC-3s depart on an inaugural flight. They were stopping at each designated airport, which would be included in the daily routes for Southeast. But they landed on into Memphis, where they had a luncheon and had a celebration for this start of an airline. And then they returned to their home base. During the first 5 months of operation, Southeast carried over 10,000 passengers. And they were all through the state, and again, they felt the need of growth. So they purchased 2 pressurized conveyor 240s, and they were added to the fleet. But as it had been in Mason-Dixon, it was also in Southeast, not a feeling of employer-employee relationship. It was a feeling of family. And one good example is when a good friend of mine happened to have been an airline stewardess at Delta, and she had decided to change jobs and had come home for the holidays. Well, during this time, Daddy said, "Do you think you could just take a few flights for us? Because we're having to put some extras on during the holidays." So she took the flight out, returning to Tri-Cities that night. Passengers left the plane. She walked off the plane. The captain yelled, "Where do you think you're going?" She said, "Well, all the passengers have deplaned. I'm going home." He said, "Not here on this airline. Get back on here. We're a crew. We clean up. We get everything in shape to take off tomorrow morning." And she said she finally realized what the family meant, the word family meant in Southeast.
There were many stories of people who flew on the Southeast Airlines, but I think Dad got the most joy when transporting the beautiful queens across the state of Tennessee to the Kingsport pageant in Jackson, Tennessee. It was there that they rode a lot of the Southeast Airline flights throughout the state of Tennessee. The biggest thrill he had actually flying was Miss America, 3 of them, and having the opportunity to host them during the stay at the Tri-City area. Southeast was also a new venture for our dad. He's always preferred to be behind the scene as a kind of guy, always assisting any movements of improvements or advancement, political, social, or educational, to make Tennessee a better place for his fellow man. In promoting Southeast, he became very involved in public relations by appearing throughout the state and giving many media interviews. When Southeast closed their doors after being turned down on the case that they filed for interstate authority on passenger freight and mail, the Mason-Dixon line received or retained one of the conveyors and converted the inside to an executive aircraft. Having served on the UT Development Council and being a good friend of the President, Andy Hope, it was with a lot of joy that Daddy presented Christmas gift to the university by delivering the General, which was used for several years to transport the athletic team. Just as the closing of the Studebaker dealership back in 1931, closing the airline was a much harder deal for Daddy. In closing the Southeast, it did not shy him or shut him, or close him down. For this was a man of vision who did not believe in the word "can." He went on to create Crown Enterprises, Inc., which was a parent company to many diversified enterprises. In Crown Cattle, he became a farmer and enjoyed showing Hereford and Angus, and actually became an interest in a bull with John Wayne. A quote in the article once stated, "To the man, there were 2 things to aim at in life: First to get what she wanted, and after that to enjoy it.
Daddy continued traveling throughout the United States, and he became aware of housing developments known as planned unit developments. And he started thinking about the farmlands that he owned. And it wasn't long before he took off for California to seek the architects who were just the premier architects for these PUD developments. And it was soon found a home in Kingsport, Tennessee. And the first Tennessee PUD planned unit development was built there, and it's known as Crown Colony. I think that his children and his grandchildren have been blessed by having the opportunity of working in so many of the family business ventures. But just as we were there in 1957 for those first flights of Southeast leaving Tri-Cities, we were there again in 1960 when the final flight was departing Tri-Cities Airport. We gathered on a patio at a lake home nearby where we could see the plane take off from Tri-Cities. And as we stood there and we saw it depart, we were watching, and all of a sudden it turned toward us. At that time we didn't know it, but the pilots had made arrangements with the control tower to fly over the plane, over the house. As we stood there and watched them come over rather low right above us, all of a sudden they tipped their wings in a final salute to the captain of their fleet, E. Ward King. And you know, I have a feeling tonight that captain's probably flying over this group tonight. And he is most appreciative. He certainly is honored to be a part of these inductees into the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame. And you know, he's probably tipping his wings in a tribute and salute to the people of Tennessee and the state he loves so dearly. Thank you.
We thank you.
Congratulations and thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And our last inductee tonight is Lieutenant Colonel William H. Pickren, Jr., U.S. Air Force retired. And his presenter is his son, Mr. Bill Pickren, who is employed with FedEx and has been for 31 years, and is a part of the senior management team in flight operations, and is also an adjunct professor for several leading universities, including Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. To present Colonel Pickren, his son, Bill Pickren.
Okay. Thank you. I'm honored to be able to introduce my father tonight, Colonel William H. Pickren, a member of the greatest generation and a man who just celebrated his 65th wedding anniversary to my mother past August. I wanted to tell you a quick story regarding one of the many reasons why my father is being honored tonight. As a typical baby boomer and Air Force brat, we traveled and lived all over the world. Obviously a great upbringing for myself and my two older sisters. But my first memory of Dad flying is when he was the Air Force advisor for the Tennessee Air National Guard in Maryville in the late 50s and 60s. I recall air shows at McGee Tyson in which he would fly the F-104 600 miles an hour, 50 foot above the runway, doing aerobatics and making sonic booms that thrilled the crowds. Actually, he was one of the first Air Force pilots to dead stick a 104 in and survive, no small feat, in a fighter jet nicknamed the Widowmaker. Fast forward to my college days, Dad had retired from the Air Force after 26 years and was now the chief pilot for the state of Tennessee, serving administrations of former governors Ellington, Dunn, and Blanton. As part of his duties, Dad would be called upon to fly lifeguard missions, which is a call sign given by ATC for emergency medical flights or flights dealing with life and death situations. Whether it be a Tennessean, such as a burn patient, needing to be flown to a specialty hospital in another state, or flying somewhere to pick up an organ for transplant back in Tennessee, Dad made a number of these flights. Anyway, at the time, I was an aviation major at MTSU, living at home, and had just soloed in a Cessna 150. Obviously, I knew just about everything there was to know about flying at that point. Early one morning, about 1 a.m., Dad woke me up and asked if I wanted to go to Boston to pick up an organ for a critical patient at Vanderbilt. Knowing he might need a little expertise, I said, sure. We rushed to the airport in Nashville, got the state Learjet ready, and departed for Boston. All was fine until about 100 miles out when Boston Center called and stated the airport was closed, 0-0 conditions, heavy snow, winds gusting to 40 knots. What were our intentions? Well, at that point, I was trained that you either go back to where you came from or divert to your alternate. You can understand my surprise when Dad told ATC our intentions were to land. As we slowly started our descent, Boston Center again called and stated the airport was officially closed. Dad said a few choice words and asked if the runway could be plowed. As the altimeter wound down, I looked frantically for the lights or landmarks, but due to the darkness and heavy snow, I couldn't see anything. While I was praying, Dad put the gear down, flaps 15, and flared the jet. Thump. Down the runway we slid as the anti-skid brakes vibrated and the reversers howled. We slid 10 degrees to the right, then 10 degrees to the left. As I looked out the window, still praying at that point, I could not even see the runway edge lights since the plow had covered them over with snow. We finally stopped at the end of the runway, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a plow coming, escorted the Massachusetts Highway Patrol with the ambulance following. As I opened the Lear's clamshell door, snow blowing in, the paramedic handed me the styrofoam cooler and said, "We didn't think anybody could have made it in." I looked at him, white as a ghost, and said, "Not a big deal." We made it back to Nashville, throttles to the firewall. The transplant was a success, and the patient from Tennessee survived. The point of my story, my father made many of these missions, sometimes by himself, sometimes with others, never again with me, and saved many Tennesseans' lives. Whether flying combat missions in World War II in both the Atlantic and Pacific theaters or flying for missions for the state of Tennessee, my father always successfully accomplished the mission he was asked to do. Therefore, I am proud to introduce the newest inductee into the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame, my father, Colonel Bill Pickering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, sir. Okay. Well, I find that honesty is probably the best thing in the end. And if I don't tell you about it, one of my so-called friends sitting out there will. Almost didn't make it here tonight. I had a real emergency just before we came. This tuxedo, the waistband broke. And we couldn't find a safety pin in that entire hotel. That was a panic situation, but I thought I'd be out here holding one hand in the left side and shaking hand with the other hand. But fortunately, I'm here. I'd like to thank the board of directors, of course, of the Tennessee Museum of Aviation for this honor. That's something I'll treasure the rest of my life, and I really appreciate it. And I'd like to offer a special thanks to Neil Melton and Bob Hunter for establishing and founding this museum. It is a wonderful place. And I looked around the hangar, I walked around earlier, and I've flown 7 of these airplanes. And they're just like it's like old home week. I can think of nothing better than to wake up each morning surrounded by these beautiful old birds. Many of them, I've flown most of them, in fact. As far back as I can remember, I wanted to fly airplanes. And when I was 10 years old, there's a World War Jenny, an old biplane used for training in World War I. Landed in Cotton Patch where I was. happened to be at the time. And he got out. He had on these blousy pants that they wore in World War I, and boots up to the ankles, up to the knees. And he had a leather jacket on and a helmet and goggles and a scarf. Now that got my eye. And I would have given anything in the world to have gone up in an airplane. And he said, "I'll take anybody up for $2. You know, I was 10 years old. It was 1933. I'm an elder citizen now. I hadn't seen $2 in my whole life at that time at one time. So I didn't get to go up, but my chance came about 8 years later. And World War II was just around the corner, and they ran an experimental class, and I fortunately made the cut on it and got to go through flight training, and I was a fighter pilot in World War II. I flew some of these planes back in the back in World War II. I think at this time I probably should recognize my family. They're all just about here. And I won't name all of them, but they're not a stranger to aviation. As you know, my son has been with FedEx for 31 years. He's been in charge of flight operations for about 25. His wife is a long-time American flight attendant. And I have a granddaughter here that flies for Southwest. And who else have I got? I've got others. But they've been around aviation so long that it's normal for them. When the war was over, I was put into the training command and to teach precision instrument flying, and I never got out of that job. I spent 6 years doing that. And it's one thing that I heard tonight is really true. You've got to trust your instruments, and you've got to know what you're doing when you're flying in weather. In 1948 and 49 was the first time the jets were introduced into the Air Force and the jet fighters. And at that time, just like the airlines, I believe, they had a manual or a book for everything you did. But they'd never written one for jet flying. And they assigned myself and one other guy to do some testing on it, and that was quite interesting. And number one was to be able to get from high altitude at high speed down to the ground and make an approach without getting in somebody else's backyard. And it was quite interesting. The other thing was that the military thought, and I think they still do, that if you're going to have to go from point A to point B, it doesn't matter what the weather is, you're going to fly through it. That was before we had any of the current day precision instruments and before we had any radar. So I think during that time, I have went up and flew in all different conditions into weather. And I think I was hit with lightning in 10 months. I was hit with lightning 11 times in an airplane. And I don't recommend flying through thunderstorms, but it can be done. Well, I was fortunate later to get back into the fighter field and stayed in for many years. And I learned a lot because I was still flying and instructing and teaching pilots. And in fact, I taught pilots from, I think it was 7 different countries in addition to our own pilots in the Air Force. And they were like just like any other pilot. They loved aviation, and they spoke the same language when it came to flying. I had several interesting assignments, a little bit different from the normal military career. I never flew civilian airlines, but I did have some good assignments. I'm surprised that I ran into many friends that I used to serve with and fly with here tonight. I'd like to mention at least 3 of them. Back when I was flying the 104, I had a crew chief. That was 49 years ago when I was doing this. He was like an old mother hen. Every time I went out to fly a plane, he would most likely say, "Now you be careful, don't you hurt my airplane." He owned that thing. He's here tonight. Dennis Lively, thank you for coming. And back in 1952, I was in Germany, and we were flying jets, some of the old ones, and later we got some new ones, like this 86 sitting back here. And you've already heard of Bob Gilliland, but he and I were flying together in those days. And later we flew the 104 together. And then he deserted me completely and went to work for Lockheed. They claimed they pay him a little more money doing that. I'm not sure. But he's quite famous in that he flew the first flight on the Blackbird, SR-71. I used to cruise around at Mach 2 myself, but Mach 3 is a simple thing for him. Bob, thank you for coming. One other friend of mine is Ed Yielding. Ed has just retired from Northwest Airlines, but Ed flew the SR-71 and holds several speed records in it. He holds the record from the West Coast to the East Coast and 2 or 3 others. Ed, I appreciate you coming very much. I'll have to tell you about one assignment. It was a hardship assignment, I thought. I was one of 5 lieutenant colonels in the Air Force, current in the 104 Starfighter, and I was sent to Italy. But before we went, my wife and I had to endure 6 months of Italian language training, 5 hours a day. And I was running a temperature every Friday night from that. But we got to Rome. We had to live in Rome, Italy. And I would go out at different Air Force bases. We started with one. And with my originally from Texas, we've been in Tennessee for many, many years, but you can use your own imagination as to what my wife and I sounded like with the Texas brogue she had, trying to speak Italian. I don't think there was many Italians understood what we were saying. But fortunately, all the pilots in the Italian Air Force spoke better English than I spoke Italian by a long shot. So we didn't really have a problem. One of my last very good assignments with the Air National Guard here. I came here as Air Advisor to the Guard and at McGee Tyson. And this unit, during the Cold War and the Berlin crisis, was sent to Germany for 1 year. And during that time, they were flying the 104, and they had the best in-commission rate and flew the most hours that any unit had ever flown. They beat any Air Force unit that ever existed that had flown an airplane. They did a wonderful job, and as far as I could tell, the current unit here is continuing to do the same thing. After I retired from the service, I flew for several governors for 12 years, and I flew for their commissioners. And I have never met as many nice people that I did during those 12 years. I know that all departments are busy in the state of Tennessee, but the Industrial Development Department, those people worked continually. And I flew them into Canada and all over the Northeast and the western part of the country, and recruiting new industry. And if you'll just pick up the paper, you'll see they're still doing the same job. I'd like to once more thank the museum for this honor. It's a great honor to me, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
And it is my privilege and honor at this time to officially induct all these inductees into the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame at this time. Give them a real big hand. And all of our standing inductees, their pictures and names are in their program. The board of directors, their names are in the program. We'll take time to read all of that to you. I will make these 2 or 3 announcements before we finish this evening. Official photos will be taken immediately after the induction ceremony is over. Don't forget the silent auction. It's going to be held open for a while. So go back and bid on those items there. I have not thanked Mr. Felix Gignard yet. He played our piano during the meal, and I thought it was really good. I think he deserves a hand. There he is right there. Hope I pronounced his name correctly. So we appreciate everyone being here. We appreciate all the people who have donated money, donated time, and donated effort to this event. I feel like it was very successful tonight. We had very worthy inductees, and I hope everyone can go home safely. We will end this night's session, as we usually do, with the words of John Gillespie McGee Jr. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds, and done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark nor ever eagle flew. And while with silent, lifting mind, I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. High flight, it's what it's about. Thank you for coming. Have a good evening. Don't forget the silent auction.